Hi everyone, welcome back to G Chats with your host Gianna Jara. I'm so happy to have you guys here for this episode. If you are new here, this is G Chats. We sit in the G spot and we have unfiltered conversations about female reproductive health, vaginal microbiome, and everything in between. So I like to tell everyone, grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your water, grab your juice, grab whatever you like. Let's get cozy because in this episode, we are doing a Q&A. So I did send out through my email list for With Meraki Co. I sent out a Google form so that you guys could submit your questions. I get emails, DMs on both Instagram, TikTok. I get questions all the time about female reproductive health, vaginal health, a ton of different questions, and I always want to answer them, but I'm literally just one person, and it can be so difficult to get through all of them and get through all of the inquiries. So I wanted to make today's episode, I felt like it was a good time. Last week's episode was about BV. The episode before that was like an introduction, who I am, my story. So I felt like this would be a great way to interact with you guys, have some of your questions answered, and have this video be a resource for those of you who, will come back to this and use this video as a way to help throughout your journey of getting optimal vaginal health or reproductive health, whatever the case may be. I want this video to serve as a resource, and I wanted it to be very interactive, and I didn't want to just come up with like commonly asked questions. I submitted a form. I put up a question like box thing on Instagram for you guys to submit questions. So if you're seeing this video and you're like, oh no, I missed it, let me know if you guys want this to be a series, because I can always make multiple parts and we can just like have another video, and basically every month we can do like a Q&A if there's new questions or whatever the case may be. So if you didn't get the chance to send a question, I hope that somebody else asked your question, but don't worry, because I likely will do this video again, and even if it's not every month, every 6 weeks even, we can make this a series and we can do it. So don't worry, let me know if this is something you want to see as a series more often. If you have any other questions, you can always leave them in the comments as well. I will see those comments and I can always jot them down in my notes so that I have them for the next series. So before we start this video, I do just want to touch on one very important thing. I know that given the political climate right now, a lot of people with female reproductive organs feel scared, confused, worried. I just found out today last night, that the reproductiverights.gov website has been taken down. That is heartbreaking because reproductive rights and reproductive care goes beyond care related to being pregnant. Reproductive care involves everything that we are going to be talking about in this video: vaginal health, PCOS, hormonal health, uterine health, like everything in between. And it sucks that our government can't see beyond pregnancy, and they think of reproductive care and reproductive rights and just associate that with pregnancy because it goes beyond that. And so that was such a good resource for so many people, and that breaks my heart. It makes me very emotional. I know that the term vaginal health is being censored on certain platforms. We did see that TikTok ban and that blackout happen, and we got the app back within 16 hours. And oddly enough, when you search vaginal health, it shows that it like violates community guidelines of some sort, which I don't really understand, because previously I had a TikTok strategist that I was working with, and she initially for my videos was telling me to use like vaginal health, #vaginal in the caption. And I remember when I was doing it, like, when you put a hashtag in the caption on TikTok, you can click on the hashtag and then see all those videos. Well, vaginal health was something that quite literally would not formulate like a click, like you couldn't click on it. So I told her, like, I don't know if we should be using this because what if it is violating community guidelines? But it was weird because when I would go to do my captions, like the actual on-screen captions, I would make sure, like I always said vaginal health in full, and there was no issues. And when you went into the search engine and you typed in vaginal health, a bunch of videos would populate and there was never any issues. It seemed like it was a hashtag related issue. And even when we started the hashtag, you would think like, okay, if there were no videos under hashtag vaginal health, and then with Marakiko or me, Gianna, was posting videos with that hashtag, that now it's populating videos under that hashtag. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't a thing that was happening. And so I just stopped using the hashtag, but I never stopped using the term vaginal health in any of my videos, especially because that's really my specialty, is vaginal health and the vaginal microbiome. So I never stopped using it. And so many other brands and creators who talk about vaginal health, I mean, even specifically Evie, they're a vaginal microbiome testing company. They use the word vaginal health. Their videos would populate when you would search it. So it was just very weird and very disheartening to see this level of censorship, that now it says this phrase may be violating community guidelines. And altogether, this whole situation is very, very upsetting. But this reinforces exactly why I do what I do and why I won't stop doing what I do, because I know how valuable it is. I talked about this in my very first episode, but being a Middle Eastern woman, talking about the vagina is taboo. Talking about reproductive health is taboo. And I wanted to make a difference because vaginal health, reproductive health shouldn't be stigmatized. It shouldn't be like, ooh, like you're talking about. It's not a scary topic. Vagina is not a bad word. And I briefly mentioned this in one of my TikToks. I've been fighting this issue of the vagina and vaginal health being stigmatized since I started my journey. I remember when I won, there was a pitch competition and I was pitching for my business and I was talking about probiotics and why they're the root to a healthy vaginal microbiome. And when I won the grand prize at this event, I was asked to come on my local radio. And I did. I went on, and I remember when I was on there, I was just talking very casually like I am with you guys right now. And they were like, wait, hold on. We got to cut because you can't say the word vagina. And I was like, what am I supposed to say as a substitute to the vagina? Like I can't say, oh, female reproductive organs, because that could be the ovaries, that could be the uterus, that could be anything. Like I'm talking about the vagina. Like I'm talking about probiotics and their benefit for the vaginal microbiome. And they're like, we understand. We're so sorry. This isn't like an us thing. This is the network's thing. And like, we can't do that. And I spoke up and I said, like, I was so dissatisfied by that and really devastated by that. And I used female reproductive organs, but I said, like, this is why I'm advocating and making these videos on TikTok. And that's why I started my TikTok. And honestly, that's the sadder part about TikTok having any kind of censorship about vaginal health, because you can't really talk about vaginal health on Meta and things like that. Like I've had when I started this G Chats podcast and I created the Instagram page and I had like welcome to the G spot in the bio, my page got taken down on Instagram because it violated community guidelines just by having the welcome to the G spot in the Instagram page or in the Instagram bio. And I put like on the page when I created it that it was like an educational platform and it was health and wellness. So it's not like I was putting the G spot in like a sexual connotation. And I understand some people try to justify like, oh, vaginal health or the word vagina is censored due to like sexual activity and because of like corn and stuff like that. But guys, let's be so for real with how bougie and accurate and all this that artificial intelligence is becoming. You're telling me that AI or any of these like platforms that have like a filtration system where they can filter out good and bad content, they can't tell the difference between vaginal health and vagina in relation to corn? Like, come on. It's so blatantly obvious that they are censoring the term and don't want us to be informed about our bodies, because it makes no sense to me that the word vaginal health as a whole is is completely violating community guidelines, allegedly. Like, health is literally following the word vagina. Like, it's saying vaginal health. Those two words together in a sentence should not violate any kind of community guidelines. Now, if there's some kind of corn title that is using vagina in the title to promote sexual activity, like, I understand, but it's not my content's not doing that. And an artificial intelligence and a filtration system, an app should be able to, especially an app, a social media app, should be able to filter. Like, they censor a lot, so they know what's educational content and what isn't. So I just think that that's a lousy excuse of, oh, well, they have to censor it because there's literally like people posting sexual activity on. Come on, like, let's be so entirely for real. Like, that is the most absurd excuse, because they can filter out. There's so many things that they have community guidelines for a reason. They have a way to be able to filter this stuff, and they can't tell you the difference. So it's just such BS. I'm so disheartened by everything that's going on in literally a 48 to 72 hour time span. But I want to emphasize and reinforce that this is why I do what I do. I am not going to stop what I'm doing. I am more passionate now than ever because I need the space. I'm someone who's in my reproductive years. And even if you're not in your reproductive years, you still need this education. You still need to be informed about your bodies. We still need to band together. We still need to support each other. And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to create a safe place. My email marketing, 90% of it is educational content for this reason, so that you guys are informed, you have the information, you feel confident, you know the questions to ask your doctors, all of these things. Like, we are going to push now more than ever to band together. I'm going to keep creating educational content. I'm going to keep creating a safe place for all of you, and I'm going to keep being the voice. And I said it my very first episode and in the introduction that we are going to have uncomfortable conversations, whether it's from vaginal health to pregnancy to menopause to sexual activity to STIs, whatever the conversation is. We're going to have these conversations with me, G, leading the way. So I will be leading the conversation and leading the way, and I will create the safest environment possible for you all to feel welcome, safe, seen, heard. So when you're in the G spot, there's no worries at all. You are in a safe place here with me. So I just wanted to open the video with that because I get so emotional because this space means so much to me. I know how important it is. I know the value in what I do, and I never want you guys to feel like you have no outlet. I will always keep doing what I'm doing. I will always be a resource and an outlet for you guys. So please don't hesitate to interact and engage with these videos, DM me, ask questions, and that's why this is a Q&A, because I wanted you guys to get all your questions to me, and I wanted to answer it because I want you guys to feel a part of this community and feel seen, and I want to be able to help you all and answer questions that you guys want answered and put out content that you guys want. So that was just like a little introduction. I love you guys so much, and I'm going to sip on my coffee, take a big breather, and we're going to get into this Q&A. But I love you all so, so, so much. Please don't forget to subscribe. Follow my email list for educational content. It's our With Meraki Co. on our website, our email list. So go to our website, follow the email list. Follow us on Instagram, on TikTok. I am going to be doing the absolute most that I can. But I love you guys so much. Let's get into this video. Okay, so I have the questions all on my phone. I got questions from Instagram through the Google documents that I sent out, and Instagram and the Google document. So that's where I got the questions. So I did organize all of the questions that I got, and I broke them up into different categories. So the first is an introduction to me and my business journey. So the first question I got was, how long did it take you for your business to flourish? So I would say it kind of depends what we consider Flourish, I would say that I was very, very, very fortunate that I didn't know much about business, that when I started my business, I made it a point to make sure that I ask for help. So I was just so open and willing and receptive to any and all information because I acknowledged, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not someone who comes from a line of business people. Like, I'm the first in my family to start a business like this. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I asked for help. And I think me being so receptive to getting help and asking for help, like going out and asking for help is one thing, and then being so receptive to all of the help. And the best thing that I always say is I've gotten over the last almost 3 years, well, 2.5 at this point, but for the last 2.5 years, I've been given so much advice, like so much advice. And for any entrepreneur, I feel like that's the best thing ever, is to get all of the advice, but like you don't have to take everyone's advice. Like, it's nice to have advice, but you at the end of the day or for me, I'm the CEO, I'm the founder. Like, I get to make the executive decisions. And I feel like as a business owner, trusting yourself with the decisions you make is so important. So getting information, advice, feedback from millions of different people is incredible, but at the end of the day, I'm the founder. I got to make the decisions, and I just think I was so open to hearing everyone's opinions on everything that it made me willing to learn, willing to see different perspectives, and then also like evaluating all of the information and then making educated decisions based on whether it was science or whether it was time and place, whether it was financial decisions. Like, it's scary, but I would say because of that, it didn't take long for the business to really stand on its own 2 feet. I've been very fortunate for that reason. I also worked my butt off to pitch at certain like grant opportunities for funds. Like the area that I'm in really does support and adore small businesses. So I was so incredibly fortunate to be able to apply for grants or even pitch at competitions. Like that one pitch competition I was talking about, it was for $25,000. Like, that's amazing. And I was only 2 months into my business, and actually my university that I graduated from, they told me, they were like, hey, like, you should apply to this. And I was like, oh, really? Like, I already started my business. And they're like, no, literally everyone who's pitching or everyone applying already has a business. Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, you didn't start yet. Even though you started, it's okay. Like, you should actually do this. So I ended up applying and I got into the competition, and then I was like the youngest there, the youngest business-wise and age-wise, and I just sought out so many opportunities for grants and funding to be able to get the business on its own 2 feet. So I don't know if I have necessarily have a specific number on how long it took for the business to flourish, but what I will say is it flourished even just with building a community, not even like financially, but just building a community, because I started my journey through creating educational content and telling my story on TikTok. And it was just beautiful how it brought together so many people with vaginas. And we all just were like, oh my God, I suffered from UTIs. I suffered from yeast infections. I suffered from BV. So I would say just like in the very beginning, it flourished. And that was because I was authentically me and I told my story. I sought out help. I sought out grants. I just was like so receptive to and willing to create a community, to get funding, to get advice, all these things. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Do you plan on getting your probiotics peer reviewed? So yes, I do actually want to partner with Temple's medical school. I have a contact or a connection to be able to make that possible. I've just had so much going on in the last 6 months that it's been a little hard to kind of like manage all of that because I am managing so many different aspects of the business. But yes, that is something that I want to do. I want to team up with medical schools and maybe even like clinical trials, like culture a woman at day 0 and then have her take my probiotics for 90 days and culture at certain marks and see the good bacteria grow. That would be like amazing. I would be so excited to do that. So, yeah, I do want to do that. I think that that's something great. And I love that someone asked this question because it shows that you guys care about those things as well. So it's equally as important to me as it is to you. And I definitely want to make that partnership happen in 2025. What is something doctors don't tell women about in regards to female reproductive health? Okay, so this is a loaded question. I could probably go on for days about things that doctors don't tell us about. But the first thing that came to my mind when I read this was the fact that something that they don't tell us about is that birth control is not the only way to manage or take care or control PCOS. You don't have to get on birth control if you have PCOS. So I think that that's just such a myth and such a like BS thing that they push. And I would go in depth like right now, but if I'm not mistaken, there's more questions in this like list and people ask about PCOS and birth control. So I'll touch on it a little later, but that I think is like one thing that doctors don't tell us is that PCOS doesn't always have to be managed with things like birth control. You don't have to take birth control if you have PCOS. So that's what I would say. Okay, so those were like introduction type of questions to like my journey and my thoughts in the space. The next set of questions that I divided was vaginal health basics. So the first question is, what does good bacteria smell like in the vagina versus bad bacteria? So good bacteria often doesn't really have a smell. Now, the reason bad bacteria, specifically when we're talking about things like bacterial vaginosis, anaerobic bacteria grows and flourishes during this condition because you don't have good bacteria. And I talked all about BV in episode 2. So if you didn't watch that, go watch that video. It is so helpful. Now, bacterial vaginosis is a condition, as I mentioned, when there's not enough good bacteria. What ends up growing is bad bacteria, and most times it's anaerobic bacteria, and anaerobic bacteria produces volatile organic compounds, VOCs, such as amines. And these amines, these VOCs, they have an odor. And so that's why bad bacteria is associated with a foul odor. Sometimes even like amines are known for this like fishy odor. So that's why you will have a foul or bad smell with bad bacteria. Now, when it comes to good bacteria doesn't really have a smell. And this is why I say like anybody promoting that like your girl needs to smell like flowers, roses, whatever. No, like it is still, even externally, like there's folds and stuff, just like an armpit, just like your under boob, like you sweat around your vagina. So you can have an odor, like an all day smell, like you smell like all day you were sweating. It's normal, but like good bacteria is not going to smell amazing. Sometimes good bacteria will smell fermented. So it could have like almost like a yogurt smell. It can also smell a little bit like vinegar, like acidic vinegar. And this isn't always. Now, if it's a pungent smell, like it's worth getting tested to see like if there's something else going on. But I wouldn't say that it has like good bacteria has a strong smell of anything, either negative or positive. It definitely not positive. So I want to get that out the way. Like good bacteria doesn't smell wonderful. It's still bacteria. It just doesn't have a foul smell. So if anything, you just shouldn't really like, if you sniff your discharge, you shouldn't have an odor. And if you do, it can smell a little fermented. That's what I will say. But bad bacteria will smell like foul. It'll either smell like fish. It can smell rotten. If it smells metallic, that could just be because of old blood or your period is coming on. So you could have that smell, which is normal, and your discharge, even after your period, can smell a little metallic. But Good bacteria doesn't really have a bad smell, but it also doesn't have like a wonderful smell. So question 2 in the vaginal health basics is, how does eating healthy impact our vaginal health? So gut health and vaginal health are incredibly connected, and not enough people talk about this. The reason why they're so connected is because your butthole and your vagina, the holes are super close together, and so close in proximity. And the space between the butthole and the vagina is called the perineum space. Now, the perineum space is notoriously known for carrying and transferring bacteria between our butthole and our vaginas. Now, when we're talking about our butthole, what comes out of our butthole? It's poop, it's waste. Now, the poop that comes out of our butthole, it's coming from our intestines. So think of the GI tract. You eat, it goes through your esophagus, it goes through your stomach, and after it goes through your stomach, now it starts to go through like the intestines and stuff. I needed to sit back. My back started hurting. But anyways, so once it goes through your intestines, it then travels through the colon and travels through your rectum, and out it goes from your butthole. So a lot of times, this is where bacteria resides, within our intestines and in our poop. And whatever bacteria is in the poop and is in the intestines, that mucosa, your rectum has a rectal mucosa, that mucosa travels to the vagina via the perineum space. So it is very, very, very important that you have healthy bacteria in your gut along with your vaginal microbiome. So that's actually how oral probiotics work. So let's quick talk about the science of oral probiotics. And this is why when I was creating probiotics, right, I knew probiotics are the key to vaginal health. But I get asked a lot of times, like, why didn't you make a suppository? Why did you go the oral route? Because too much of anything that's good is never good. So I didn't want people to misuse a suppository and like pop in a suppository every single day. Also, oral probiotics are so much better to like restore and then maintain. Like you can keep taking oral probiotics and there's a lower risk of good bacteria overgrowing. But also on the third end is that having good bacteria in the gut is equally as important as having good bacteria in the vagina. So what happens is this good bacteria and probiotics, when they're formulated, they need to go through the stomach to get to the intestines. If probiotics do not survive the stomach and don't make it to the intestines, any oral probiotic, then it's a waste of your money, a waste of your time to be taking them, which is why I am gummies #1 hater. So any company that has probiotics in gummy form, I'm the #1 hater because they don't work. So they are not encapsulated or protected in any kind of way that makes them capable of withstanding the stomach's very high or very like high acidity, basically. So not high pH, super low pH. Like the stomach gastric juice is incredibly acidic, and this is where 90% of the probiotics on the market, they die off, especially gummies. And so you need to make sure that you are taking a probiotic from a company who has thought about this, aka with Meraki Co. But we've thought about this. I thought about this. So I wanted to make sure that the probiotics actually survive the stomach's acidity. And if they survive the stomach's acidity, then they can do their job in the intestines. And that's where you want the probiotics to be. So once they do their job in the intestines, they then can travel through your poop and out your poop, but they've populated in the intestines, and your rectal mucosa ascends to your vaginal mucosa. And this was discovered back in like the 80s because urinary tract infections come from E. coli that's in our poop. And doctors were like, well, if bad bacteria can do this and bad bacteria can go from the butthole to the vagina, why can't good bacteria? And guess what? They did studies, and good bacteria can in fact do it. So it's really important that the probiotic you take does withstand the stomach's acidity and populates in the intestines. That's really, really important. So your diet does affect your vaginal microbiome because your gut microbiome affects your vaginal microbiome. Additionally, what you eat also affects your immune system. And if you are new here, I talk a lot about how important the immune system is for vaginal health. So it's the same concept. Like if you were sick with a cold or the flu every single month, you would say, oh no, my immune system is weak, right? Like if you're sick with an upper respiratory infection, you would immediately flag your immune system. Like that's not normal that every single month you are sick. It's the same with your vagina. If your vagina is sick every single month with a yeast infection, BV, a UTI, that is a sign that your immune system, the local immune system, is weak. And having good gut health and eating clean, eating healthy is so important because that can strengthen your immune system, which teams up with the local immune system in your vaginal microbiome and can help you combat yeast, BV, UTIs, because your vagina is never, like E. coli is never going to be completely gone from your gut. You are always going to have a little bit of E. coli in your poop. That's just normal. It's a normal pathogen that exists in our gut. The reason why it doesn't just like kill all of us because we have bad bacteria in our gut is because we should have more good bacteria in our gut that's protecting us. And it's the same with your vagina. Your vagina can come into contact with E. coli, but it shouldn't like overgrow and cause a full-blown infection just because your vagina comes into contact with yeast or comes into contact with E. coli. It's not like, I talked about this in the last episode, but it's not like something like chlamydia or gonorrhea. Like once your vagina comes into contact with it, it's like, oh shoot, and it can cause a full-blown infection. But I did mention this before. If you have a strong vaginal microbiome and you have a healthy immune system, there have been studies showcasing that women with these two things, strong immune system and a strong, healthy vaginal microbiome that's dominated with good bacteria, lactobacillus, and it's acidic because of lactic acid, when they were exposed to chlamydia or gonorrhea, they had a less chance of actually developing an infection. Some of them didn't even contract the bacteria. So they really do have antimicrobial properties. Your vagina has antimicrobial properties. The good bacteria does, the immune system does. So it's really important to feed your body the healthy things that it needs so that your gut and your vagina are both strong because they are tied together. And I've noticed a lot of women who struggle with BV have gastrointestinal problems. So if you correct both, you're essentially killing two birds with one stone. Are there specific foods that help with down there? So I actually talked about this in my vaginal health guidebook. There isn't one food that just like suddenly makes you smell or taste good. So the whole pineapple thing, like pineapples are good for you. They keep you hydrated. But again, the root and what is going to make you just smell good or be healthy down there is good bacteria, and pineapples don't have that, so it's not going to aid in making you smell good. That's such a myth. As I mentioned in the first question, just overall eating healthy. So if you are eating lots of fruits and vegetables, it can help with hormonal health. It can help with gut health, getting your vitamins in. So if you're someone where you're busy, you feel like you don't always eat as clean as you should, maybe investing in a multivitamin along with a probiotic would be great because then you can get your vitamins in. And I think that's what's super important is if you're not eating clean and you're not eating healthy, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, you could be at a risk of essentially depleting yourself from all of the essential vitamins and nutrients. So it's really important to eat healthy to get all of the essential vitamins and nutrients and probiotics. So in general, eating healthy is just important, just in general, but I wouldn't say there's like one specific food that's going to be a game changer. It's really just about making sure that you're getting in your vitamins, your probiotics, but overall just like being mindful of what you're putting into your body. But something like pineapples is not just going to suddenly make your vagina smell good or taste good. Like that's just not how it works. So the next question in vaginal health basics is, what is the most important thing that unbalances your pH that most women miss? Honestly, I would say something like vaginal washes and douches, or using like boric acid, so just feminine hygiene as a whole. I mean, from the beginning of time, feminine hygiene was created and has been filled with misinformation. If you didn't know, and I made a TikTok video about this, Lysol was originally sold as a feminine hygiene product. It was sold in the feminine hygiene care line, and it was used as a contraceptive, so to stop or prevent pregnancy, and it also was sold as a douche. So women from the beginning of time have been trained like you need to clean the inside of your vagina with disinfectants and use boric acid and all that. Like, no, you don't. I just feel like using even feminine hygiene washes that have the fancy scents and smells like rose and strawberry, like fragrance, can throw off your girl downstairs. It can kill. And I talked about this in the last episode, but there have been studies done showcasing that Vagisil pH balancing washes actually killed good bacteria in the vagina, the lactobacillus that's found. It kills this good bacteria, and it was examined and done in a lab. So that shows that like these products are not made with your pH in mind, not made with the good bacteria in mind. So just stay away from feminine hygiene products. Like, stick with the most basic of basic routine. You just need an unscented, simple wash. I use Dove's baby soap, literally unscented baby wash. I use that. And yeah, sure, the lips are spread open, but it doesn't affect the vaginal microbiome. I also then use the water wipes. So they're literally just cloth wipes that have water and like a hint of, I think, grapefruit extract, but they're super good on sensitive skin. I use them when I go number 2. I use them when I'm on my period. I use them when I pee. They're just great wipes to have. Make sure that you're wearing cotton underwear. So I love the brand Hoo Ha. Hoo Ha is a great company. Their panties also have zinc oxide, I believe. And this helps with not allowing bad bacteria to flourish, and it keeps you dry. So the panties will stay dry because bad bacteria loves moisture and it loves heat. It's basically your vagina can be an incubator down there for bad bacteria. And so when you have a good panty that stays dry and stays cool, you're less likely to have bad bacteria harboring and growing. So making sure you're wearing a simple underwear that's just 100% cotton. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need lace. You don't need anything bougie. Just nice, simple underwear that's cotton. Again, I love Hoo Ha. Unsponsored. I bought it with my own money. So keeping everything simple for down there is like the best tactic in my opinion. So the next category is hygiene practices, and this is like a perfect segue because we kind of talked about the most important thing that unbalances your vaginal pH, and I think that it's most feminine hygiene brands and actual products. But in terms of hygiene practices, someone asked, do you think a portable bidet helps clean down there better? I think bidets are great if you feel it's necessary. Like I said, I carry wipies on me, so I wipe anytime, but especially when you go number 2. I think, again, as I talked about, when it comes to urinary tract infections, BV, and yeast infections, the pathogens from the rectal mucosa and from your poop can spread to your vaginal mucosa and vaginal microbiome. So if you can avoid those pathogens from crossing over and spreading to the vagina with something like a bidet or wipies, then yes, I think you should use it. I know there's portable bidets on Amazon, so I would give you 2 thumbs up. I think that that's a great way. I think no matter what, you should have a cleaning practice or routine that's done when you go number 2, especially if you're not home. Not everybody can just like hop in the shower after they poop. If you're at work or you're at the mall, you're at a restaurant, whatever, and you just have the urge and you got to go number 2, it's really important to clean just because that mucosa does spread to the vagina and you want to reduce your risk of contracting something like a UTI, BV, or yeast infection. And so the best way is by cleaning up. I know a bidet could be a little messy to like carry around, or maybe some of you don't. And I think this was always my thing is I'm not going to carry a portable bidet that already has water in it, and like filling it up at a sink just feels, especially like a public bathroom, is like, I don't know how I feel about it. So carrying wipies was just always easiest for me. So I always have water wipes on me. So either or, but I don't think a portable bidet is a bad idea at all. I actually think it's a great idea. So 10 out of 10. Does using baby wipes to wipe front/back throw off your pH? So certain kinds can, certain feminine wipes can. All you need is something very simple, which is why I use water wipes. It is so simple. It's just water and cloth. And I don't really like get up in there with my vagina when I'm on my period. I use it to like freshen up, but I use it more so like going number 2 and really cleaning up down there. But they're great for sensitive skin. They're unscented. There's no fragrance. Again, like I said, there's like like 3 ingredients. It's the cloth, it's the water, and then like a hint of grapefruit extract, which you don't smell, you don't feel. It's just there to soothe the skin. So I love water wipes. I recommend them. They're used on babies. And 10 out of 10, if you're going to use any wipies or any kind of baby wipes, those are the ones that I would suggest. So the next group of questions are impact of diet and lifestyle. How can we maintain pH balance during our periods? Any practices or products to avoid? So I would say that in general, when you're on your period, something that's important to know is that vaginal blood, so the bleeding from your vagina during your period, does have a higher pH than your normal regular period. So, or during your normal regular menstrual cycle. So your vaginal pH, when it's healthy, when you're not on your period, should be between a 3.8 and a 4.5. So menstrual blood has a pH of about 7.4, and this is on a medical platform. So remember, the vaginal pH is between a 3.8 and a 4.5. So period blood is slightly alkaline, so you could experience a little bit of uncomfortability during this time just because the blood is a different pH than what your vagina is used to. However, my best way, there's no real way because you're bleeding, you can't just like get rid of the blood. My best advice is to make sure that you're changing regularly, make sure that you change your pads regularly, your tampons, your menstrual cups, so that that blood is not sitting within the vaginal microbiome and in the vaginal microbiome for extended periods of time, especially if you are a tampon wearer. So for somebody like myself who wears pads, I just find a lot of comfortability in the period blood like flowing out of me, and it's not really like trapped within my vagina. But if you are someone who prefers tampons or menstrual cups, that's completely fine. Just make sure that you're changing regardless of what you use regularly. Another thing that's beneficial is just wiping up throughout the day. Now, if you are using water wipes, please make sure that when you use the water wipes that you then like tap with some toilet paper or paper towel and like dry off, because if you're wearing a pad and your pH is higher, there's a lot of moisture and bacteria that can harbor, and bacteria, as I mentioned, it loves heat and it loves humidity. It loves moisture. And if you ever, I worked in a microbiology lab, but when we would grow bacteria, we would put it in the incubator, and the incubator had 2 things, heat and water. So bad bacteria loves to thrive with moisture and heat. So it's just naturally warm down there. And if there's water and a lot of moisture, you're more susceptible to harboring bacteria, and the pH is higher. So just make sure that you're completely dried down there for the most part, and you try to stay as dry as possible. Try to avoid working out. I personally do not go to the gym during the time that I'm on my period. I understand everyone's situation is different, but I just avoid the gym when I'm on my period just because I sweat, and that harbors moisture, and that warmth can cause, with the elevated pH levels, can cause bacteria to just thrive. So I just personally like to avoid that. So those are kind of my best tips and practices. Next question is, what are your thoughts on vaginal steaming? Okay, so this is a really good question, and I've actually been asked this before, and I want to touch on it. Now, I have a health and wellness brand, but I also am a scientist, and I have a biomedical engineering degree, and I love holistic medicine and natural medicine as much as the next person. And I always say this, that science is how we learn about natural medicine and holistic medicine. We use science to understand and learn and educate ourselves about the natural earth plants and things like that. So with that being said, there is no scientific evidence or information that makes sense in my mind as a scientist to back up vaginal steaming. I don't necessarily think that there's anything incredible about it. I also just don't really understand. I think the only benefit that makes sense to me is the heat. I think having the heat could soothe during either pregnancy or even during your period. Having some kind of heat can help with the muscles and relaxing the muscles. And that relaxation of the muscles can alleviate some pain and some tenderness that you're having, some discomfort within the pelvic floor. So it can help relax the pelvic floor muscles. But I wouldn't necessarily say that in terms of the herbs, the steam from the herbs, like doing anything. I haven't read any notable research papers that emphasize, oh, vaginal steaming like does this or that, steaming eucalyptus or steaming tea tree or whatever like does anything. I think the best way to help your vaginal microbiome or just the vagina and reproductive health is anything orally or anything intravaginally thus far. And there's a lot of evidence for different agents. I mean, even if we talk about tea tree and coconut, like there's at least evidence and research done with intravaginal work and also like oral work. If you take like tea tree oil supplements orally, what that does. So I just feel like I opt on the side of like oral supplements or even vaginal suppositories and things like that versus steaming. I just don't see the benefit of vaginal steaming. So I'm always open to research coming out. And I think that's really important is as a scientist, staying open-minded. I don't completely reject it. I just want to see real and true evidence and science that highlights how good it is. And I just thus far haven't seen that. So I wouldn't really recommend vaginal steaming. I would opt for taking the herbs and boiling them and drinking tea. I think there's plenty of research around herbs and teas, raspberry leaf tea, a dandelion tea. Tea is like a much better, and consuming the actual like boil versus like sitting over it makes more sense to me. So that would be my opinion. So next set of questions are common conditions and concerns. So the first one is, what do you recommend when you're only getting BV? I've been struggling for a while now. So a lot of these questions are about BV. And if you didn't watch my second video, I really, really, really recommend you to. So I think in general that if you are struggling with BV, there's probably two things. The first set is you probably either are resistant to antibiotics or you have a biofilm. I talk about it in depth in episode 2, but I think it's really important to go into your doctor's office and make sure you're asking for a culture and a susceptibility test to make sure what bacteria, what pathogen is exactly growing. And then you also want to confirm then what antibiotics work against that pathogen. And then if you do take those antibiotics and you don't see a difference, it's definitely worth treating the biofilm with things like a digestive enzyme or something like boric acid. And I absolutely hate boric acid, but the only time I recommend boric acid is when there is a biofilm present. Now, something I want to highlight is that there is a misconception that boric acid balances the vaginal pH. That is untrue. Boric acid kills off both good and bad bacteria. It's very intense. It doesn't just kill off bad bacteria, it kills off good bacteria. If you are dependent and reliant on boric acid, that's a ding-a-ling-a-ling, like that's a sign, that's a flag waving in your face that boric acid is no good. You shouldn't be dependent on it. It's not balancing your vaginal pH if you need to keep taking it, and that's because it's killing both the good and bad bacteria. It also has a pH of about a 5.5, and your vagina needs to be between a 3.8 and a 4.5. So like taking it immediately after your period, it might bring your period or your pH down to a 5.5, but it's still not acidic enough. The only thing that can acidify the vagina enough is lactic acid that comes from the good bacteria. So that's how you rebalance your vaginal pH. So I want to make sure that I emphasize that because I feel like boric acid is incredibly misused on the internet and in society. It doesn't balance your vaginal pH, but it is a cell wall disruptor. So it can be really beneficial for those of you struggling with a biofilm and you want to eradicate and disrupt the cell wall of the biofilm so that the antibiotics can then penetrate. So that would be my suggestion. If you are struggling, I would say ask your doctor for a culture and susceptibility test. And then after getting that information, Also look into if you have a biofilm, and if you think you do, it's worth either using boric acid or digestive enzymes, which leaves me into the next question of, I talk a lot about digestive enzymes, and a lot of you have been asking me if I'm coming out with a digestive enzyme product. The answer is yes. I am working on trying to launch a digestive enzyme specifically for eradicating and breaking down the biofilm. So I'm so excited. That is coming out in 2025. I will be launching it in 2025. It is so important to have. So many of you are struggling with recurring BV because of biofilms and you don't even know it. So I'm here to not only bring the education, but provide optimal products for this problem. And I'm very hopeful that this digestive enzyme will help eradicate the biofilm, and then you can restore and maintain the vaginal microbiome with our probiotics. So that will be coming in 2025. So I'm super excited for that launch to happen. I don't have an exact date yet, but just sign up for the email list so that you can be in the loop when our product is launched. So the follow-up question is, can you have lingering symptoms of BV after getting it under control? So honestly, if you are having lingering symptoms of BV after getting it under control, the likelihood is that it's probably not under control, and there could be a potential of a biofilm present, as I just mentioned. So if you are someone who's taking antibiotics and you're like, oh my God, yeah, I feel better, and you feel better for like 2 or 3 days and it just doesn't last and the symptoms are back, it's worth considering that maybe, just maybe, you have a biofilm. And a biofilm, again, is a sticky, slimy coating that protects bad bacteria. And the bacteria that's associated with BV is typically Gardnerella. Gardnerella has recently been broken up into 4 different strains. And these strains are notoriously known for forming a biofilm. So if you have a history of BV and this is something you're experiencing, I am willing to bet that you likely have a biofilm present. So if you did not watch episode 2, please watch it, because I touch on everything that you need to know about BV. If sex is a trigger for infections for me, do I have to pause sex until I grow my microbiome? My answer is yes. So if you feel that sex is triggering your bacterial vaginosis, and I actually did have another question, I grouped these together. Somebody said that they feel that the scent of their vagina or of the BV is worse after they have sex. So there's someone dealing with bacterial vaginosis and they take their antibiotics, they feel fine, but then they have an odor, particularly after sex or particularly after their period. And so this is twofold. There's probably 2 reasons why you have an odor after sex. It's either A, a pH issue, or B, a physical like penetration issue. So whether you are intimate with a man or you're using sex toys or you have a condom or whatever the case may be, the actual friction of the penis pushing up against the biofilms, so the bacteria that's embedded in the sticky, slimy coating, can produce what we talked about earlier in the episode, those VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. Those VOCs are naturally produced, and the bacteria is produced in the vagina when you are messing with the biofilm, and when it's released into the vagina, that's where you smell it the most. So alternatively, it could be from seminal fluid. So if you are allowing your partner to ejaculate inside of you, this seminal fluid, given that seminal fluid is rather high, the pH is, I want to say off the top of my head, like an 8.5 or an 8. So it's rather high. And this high temporary pH shift can cause the bacteria in your vagina that's bad to flourish and thrive. So seminal fluid could play a role in why it smells after sex, or why you're having uncomfortable symptoms after sex, because the bacteria is flourishing. Or it could just be from the friction from the actual act of penetration that's producing then the compounds, the byproducts, and the bacteria itself that's in the biofilm out into the open of the vaginal microbiome, and that's why you have this odor. So if you're recognizing or seeing that there's a link between sex and BV and that it's a trigger and then all your symptoms come back, I think you need to pause and address the biofilm, as I've been mentioning, address the infection, and just keep sex out of the picture. This is really important because sex in general is messy. a male partner can have their own, and even if it's not a male partner, a female partner, whoever you're intimate with, they have their own unique microbiome. And when you are introducing that into your vagina while you are trying to eradicate bad bacteria and bring in your defenders, you could just throw off the entire process. So it's just super, super important that in the process of trying to get rid of the bad guys and rebuild the good guys, you just want to prevent introducing yourself to bad guys as much as possible. And that means to avoid and abstain from sex for a little bit. And it doesn't have to be forever. I would say like even just like 4 to 6 weeks of just eradicating the biofilm, treating the bacteria, and then rebuilding. 6 weeks. In that case, it would be, like a 6-week time frame. I think that that's like super important. And I hope that your partners, whoever you're intimate with, can understand that it is a commitment to yourself and your vaginal microbiome. So that would be my best piece of advice. Is there a connection between PCOS and recurring BV? Yes, yes, yes. There is a connection between the two. So I actually talked about this on my TikTok, but your hormones play such an important role with your vaginal microbiome. Estrogen, having healthy amounts and balanced amounts of estrogen is super, super important because estrogen produces this polysaccharide known as glycogen. And this glycogen is within our vaginal walls. So the good bacteria that's stuck to the epithelium of the vagina uses this polysaccharide as energy to grow and flourish and stay alive. So when you have PCOS is notoriously known for having high or elevated levels of androgens like testosterone, for example, but low amounts of estrogen. And low amounts of estrogen means that you might struggle to keep this good bacteria in your vagina. And because of this, you might be more susceptible to bad guys flourishing and growing and causing conditions like bacterial vaginosis. So yes, there is a link between BV and PCOS. It's not talked about enough because people just think like, oh, hormones and it's a problem, but the hormones directly affect your vaginal microbiome. And this is actually why we see women who are going through menopause. They typically have issues with urinary and vaginal infections because the dip in estrogen, the loss in estrogen, is what makes us susceptible because estrogen helps keep the good bacteria in our vagina. And when estrogen dips, we can lose that good bacteria and now we are susceptible to infections. So that's also why you might notice that you are susceptible to bacterial vaginosis or UTI or a yeast infection around your period, because right before our period, our estrogen dips. And I was one of those people. My first UTI, I was on my period and I was having a cold, so I had a compromised immune system. So it was just a match made in heaven for E. coli to flourish within my urinary tract. So PCOS and BV definitely have a link, and it's all because of estrogen. So it's super, super important to try to balance your androgens and even things like having elevated cortisol. So your body always needs cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It always needs it. And it starts off really high during the day and it dips at night so that you can sleep and your melatonin can kick in. But some people have elevated cortisol levels where their cortisol levels are just chronically high all the time. If this is the case, chronically high cortisol levels can impact and lower estrogen. And again, if you lower estrogen, you are harming the good bacteria in your vagina. So there is a link to PCOS and BV. What can unusual and random spotting be caused by? So it could be a hormone issue. That would be my biggest guess, is maybe there's something going on with your hormones, the progesterone levels or even the estrogen levels. So I would say it's super important to advocate for yourself and make sure that you ask your doctor for a hormone test just to see what is going on there. If all of your hormones come back healthy and normal, I would look into the vaginal microbiome, see if there's anything abnormal there, especially because some BV causing bacteria can spread to the uterus and cause a condition known as endometriitis. And this is where BV bacteria or any bacteria spreads to the uterus. And this can cause unusual spotting, also endometriosis. So I would just say first, let's look into the hormones and then we can look at the vaginal microbiome, the bacterial composition, and start looking at the uterus and seeing if there's anything physically wrong with the uterus. There could be fibroids, there could be ovarian cysts. So there could be a number of things. It's really hard to just put your finger on one thing for unusual spotting. If it's something that has come out of nowhere and you've never experienced it, definitely advocate for yourself and push for your doctor to start running some tests. So the next set of questions are birth control and fertility. So thoughts on girls getting on birth control at such a young age. So I think personally that birth control in general, I think there's a lot of ethical issues with how it was first made, how it was first advertised. There are a lot of ethical issues that I have a problem with. I would say that my thoughts are, I understand that everyone's situation is different. If you are someone who has very healthy hormones, balanced hormones, and you're a young teenager, you're 14, you're 15, you're 16, and you want to abstain from sex, or you want to engage in sex, but you want to prevent pregnancy, I think that our medical system and our education system has done a horrible job at educating young girls on how to not get pregnant in ways that don't involve birth control. I feel like birth control has been made out to be the only method, and there are many methods that are effective in teaching women more about their bodies so that they can understand their bodies better. And I'll get into what I'm talking about in the second question. But I just feel like there are many different ways to avoid pregnancy that doesn't need to be birth control, because at the end of the day, birth control was made with a ton of ethical issues. There are so many symptoms from being on hormonal birth control, and this is because hormonal birth control does put synthetic estrogen into the body. So I had to tell a lot of my friends this. When you take the sugar pill for like X amount of days, you are not having a period. When you start to bleed and you're spotting or whatever, that's not a period. You are having withdrawal bleeding. So if you don't know what withdrawal bleeding is, it is essentially your body having withdrawal symptoms from the drug. So your body is not getting the hormone, so you end up having withdrawal bleeding. It's not a period. You are not having a period. Your body is not releasing an egg and shedding its lining. That's not what it's doing during the sugar pill. So if you are someone who's been on birth control and you just haven't had a period in years, I get so concerned with the long-term effects of being on birth control. It's just super scary because I feel like a lot of women are misinformed when they get onto it, especially young girls. They just think, oh, I don't want to get pregnant, but they don't really understand what birth control entails. You're putting synthetic estrogen in your body, and if you are someone who has very normal, healthy hormones, pumping in fake estrogen into your body is a problem, because now you suppress your body's natural ability to make estrogen on its own. So then when you get off of birth control, your body can struggle to produce its own natural estrogen. So it's just very important to really think about that when you are getting on birth control. If you are someone with hormonal imbalances and birth control is a means to balance your hormones, I completely understand. But if you are someone with healthy hormones, I just want you to be mindful of the synthetic hormone that you are putting into your body and what that could cause and mean for your body long term. But I, of course, don't judge anybody's situation, because I understand everybody's situation is different. And some people need to be on birth control to prevent pregnancy, and it's the only thing that makes them feel safe and comfortable. Like, I completely understand. But in terms of just a very young age, I just feel like once you get on it on a young age, you're likely on it for years to come until you are an adult who can make informed decisions yourself. Because most times, like when you're 14, 15, 16, you need parental approval to get on it. And I just feel like a lot of young girls are on it for years and years and years, and then they get off of it and everything is out of whack, and they're having BV, yeast infections, UTIs, cystic acne, their hair is falling out. They're just dealing with everything all at once and want to regain their power and balance their hormones naturally. So I just feel like getting on it at such a young age when you don't have like serious hormonal imbalances to begin with is just not the healthiest thing. So that would be my advice and my thoughts on it. Someone says birth control can't be the only option. What are natural methods that you would recommend? I live in Texas and I am afraid of some of the regulations, so I want to know how I could prevent pregnancy naturally. So, and also the follow-up question would be, how do we go about checking how fertile we are and any infertility issues? So, for those of you who don't know this, you can only get pregnant at one time of the month. And I want to bring this up because if we are ever stripped away of our rights to receive birth control and abortion care and all of these things, I want you guys to be able to understand your body at a deep level so that you know exactly what to pay attention to and when to focus and things like that, what time of the month to really pay attention to. There is only one time of the month that you can get pregnant, and that is your fertile window. Your fertile window happens right after you ovulate. This is when your egg is just sitting there waiting to get fertilized. When the egg does not get fertilized, this is where your uterine lining and the egg sheds. It all sheds. So in that time where the egg is just waiting to be fertilized, that is called your fertile window. That happens right after you ovulate, right after your eggs are released from the ovaries. There is a way to know exactly when you are ovulating and when you are most fertile, when your luteinizing hormone is at its peak. So the number one tip that I recommend is looking into something like basal body temperature tracking. So you can get a special thermometer. I use the company Natural Cycles. Natural Cycles has an app and they send you a thermometer. You take your temperature under your tongue every single morning, like right when you wake up. You're going to want to give it maybe 30 to 60 days, like 2 or maybe even 3 months, just to collect and get to know you, get to understand your cycle and how your body is. So what this does is it tracks your temperature. When your body ovulates, our body temperatures, our basal body temperature will rise by about 0.5 to 1 degree Fahrenheit every single time, every month, right after you ovulate. So your body, what it does during the 2 to 3 months, it's collecting what is your normal average body temperature, and then what is that temperature rise, the amount or the range in which your body's temperature rises after you ovulate. Once it detects that data, it will start to predict exactly when you're going to ovulate, exactly when you're going to be fertile, exactly when you avoid sex, when you don't avoid sex, any of those things. So you can actually set the app like, oh, I want to just like be more regular with my period and know when I'm getting my period. Or you could say, oh, I want to use this as birth control. Tell me when I should avoid sex and unprotected sex and when I'm in the green zone and when I can have sex and I don't have to worry about it. Or you could say, hey, I'm trying to get pregnant. Tell me when I'm fertile and when I should have unprotected sex in my fertile window to get pregnant and when I don't need to have unprotected sex because I'm not fertile. So you can actually like tell the app and like you when you sign up what exactly you're using the app for, if you're using it for birth control, if you're using it to get pregnant. But that is just one way in which you can track naturally and understand your body. It's such a good feeling to be able to understand your body better. Like, wow, my temperature rose. I already ovulated. I'm in my fertile window. I can get pregnant. Or, oh, I should stay away from sex because I don't want to get pregnant. Or, oh, cool, I know this information, so that means I'm going to get my period in 11 days or whatever the case may be. Like, you just become so in tune with your body. It's such a beautiful thing. So Natural Cycles is a great app. I use it myself. And as I mentioned, you can cater it to whatever your needs are. Another thing with that then is they give educational topics and content so that you could track your cervical mucus. So cervical mucus is really well known to be able to tell you when you're ready for pregnancy because your cervical mucus will change throughout the month. Once it starts to get very like watery, egg whitey, and you just see an increased amount of it, you know that you're fertile. Your cervix, your vagina, your uterus, everything's waiting for sperm to fertilize the egg. So you will be able to know from the texture of your cervical mucus. So that's another thing. But I just think like having actual like numerical data is just so important versus like visual data. I just think like numerical data and seeing the body temperature rise is just so valuable and so helpful because you basically confirm without a shadow of a doubt like my body temperature, unless you're like sick, but without a shadow of a doubt, my body temperature rose. I know that I ovulated, and it just, you have a better understanding of your body. It might be a little difficult if you are someone who has hormonal imbalances, but you still might get some benefit from using something like that. So that would be my recommendation if you are someone struggling with fertility or infertility and you want to understand it better, definitely look into taking your body temperature. And remember, you can still, like, during your fertile window, if you're using it as birth control and you know you're fertile and you don't want to abstain from sex, use a condom or use spermicides. Be careful what spermicides, because they could kill good bacteria, but you can take extra precaution, withdrawal, whatever. Like, you can take extra precaution and use barrier methods if you're like super scared. You don't have to just like abstain from sex altogether. Or, I mean, you can if you're like really worried, but if you do want to engage in sex during your fertile window, you can use a condom. Like, you can be extra safe during that time. And that's, a lot of people do use it. And I did see that there was a study that people who use natural, like, basal body temperature control, and like they use that as their method, which is BBT. People who do use it, actually 90% of them, over 90%, have successfully prevented pregnancy by using BBT. So it is effective. It just, knowing your body is effective enough to prevent pregnancy, because there is really only one time of the month that you can get pregnant. And if you avoid seminal fluid in your vagina at that time, you're likely not going to get pregnant. So that would be my advice. But if you're someone who is having sex and unprotected sex during the time that you are fertile and you aren't getting pregnant, I think then it is worth looking into your hormones, looking into the egg quality, looking into your uterus, looking into your vaginal microbiome. An imbalance in your vaginal microbiome can absolutely play a role into fertility. Your uterine health, so how healthy the uterus is. Do you have fibroids? Are your eggs weak? All of these things can be causing you being infertile, even if you are being intimate during your fertile window and actively trying to get pregnant. So I would investigate all of those things and start talking to your doctor about it, because there could be a deeper thing going on. So reproductive health challenges on that topic. I have really bad PCOS. How do I ask my doctor to actually work and see what's going on and what's causing it? So the first thing I recommend is doing a hormone test. Make sure that your cortisol gets tested, your testosterone gets tested. Actually, I'm going to tell you right now the list I'm going to go through, because I had a hormone test done myself and I actually told my doctor exactly what to order. So I'm going to give you the same piece of advice on what you should have your doctor order, so that way you know. So insulin growth factor, that should be tested. Your cortisol, your luteinizing hormone, DHEA sulfate, 7-hydroxyprogesterone, prolactin, follicle stimulating hormone, your testosterone profile, and your estrogen. Those should be tested. So go to your doctor, ask for those lists of hormones to be tested from your blood. And that should give some clarity on what's abnormal, what's not abnormal, because I don't think that there's like a one size fits all thing for PCOS. I think it's really helpful to double down and boil down to what hormone in the endocrine system is off, because that one hormone can then throw off all the other hormones in our endocrine system. And people forget that like hormones are a part of the endocrine system and it functions as a system. Basically, if one wheel is moving, the other wheel is moving, and they all work together. So if one wheel is messed up, chances are all the other wheels are messed up. So we want to get down to what is the issue. Is it the androgens? Is it the cortisol? Is it progesterone? We just want to figure that out. And from there, you can start playing with even supplements to try to balance cortisol or balance your insulin, balance your testosterone, your androgens. Like, there are just so many different aspects here. So I would start with a blood test and get your doctor to really like order that so that we can get to the root of it. So the last group of questions is specific products and solutions. So someone asked about boric acid suppositories. They said that they use it after period and sex, but the odor always comes back. Would your supplements help? And does my boyfriend need supplements too? So again, if you're taking boric acid suppositories and the odor and symptoms just keep coming back, girl, the boric acid's not working. And I'm so sorry, because I feel like so many of you are a victim of this, because social media, the internet, the drugstores, they've all promoted boric acid completely wrong, and they're just not scientists. They don't understand science. They don't understand how boric acid works. So it doesn't work in the way we've been taught that it does. if you are dependent on boric acid, that is literally a sign it's not working, that it's not working. And that's exactly what happens with the use of boric acid. So I would say that you definitely need to rebalance your vaginal microbiome with something. And even if you eradicate the BV causing bacteria from your vagina, you've also now, like, let's remove, even if you don't have a biofilm, if you use boric acid and it completely wipes out your vagina of the bad bacteria, it also wiped your vagina out of the good bacteria. And so now when you come into contact with bad bacteria again, whether that's through sex or through your rectal mucosa, that bad bacteria is going to thrive because you don't have your good guys there. The good bacteria is not there. You never restored the microbiome of the good bacteria. And so now we have a problem of recurring BV over and over and over again. So the key here is, yes, taking probiotics. So my product will absolutely help restore the vaginal microbiome of the necessary and good bacteria. And then while you keep taking the probiotics, this will maintain the good bacteria in the vagina so that it protects you from those pathogens flourishing. Now, as for your boyfriend, my advice would be, I don't think he necessarily needs to be treated if he's not having symptoms. However, if you have chronic and recurring BV and yeast infections, and sometimes you don't even know you had a yeast infection until after you had sex, it's likely that those microbes are now on your partner's penis and their penile microbiome. So it is important that they do get swabbed because, again, let's say you eradicate the infection altogether. If you don't take the proper measures to restoring and maintaining with probiotics, and you're immediately intimate after antibiotics or after boric acid, and your partner has those microbes, he's introducing the bad guys back into your vagina before your body has even had the ability to rebuild with good bacteria. And even if you do have enough good bacteria, it sucks to have a high microbial load of bad bacteria on his penile microbiome and introduce that into your vagina all the time. It's overwhelming for the vagina. So I would say that, yes, it doesn't hurt to have your boyfriend treated. I think he should get swabbed. I think he should talk to his doctor about it, and he should get prescribed antibiotics or diflucan if yeast infections are the concern. So I would say yes. The only time I think it's like not necessary is for a UTI, because a UTI is directly invading our urinary tract. So it's not invading their urinary tract. We can't like necessarily spread the E. coli onto their penile microbiome. So, but BV for sex and yeast infections, yes, it's possible that they could be carrying those microbes. And while our vaginas, even when they're healthy, can still have those microbes in it, it's just if they have a high microbial load, introducing that into the vagina, even if the vagina is healthy, may still overwhelm it. So yes, get your partners tested and treated if necessary. How can supplements help get to the source of recurring odor and infections? I feel like this is kind of a repeated one, but supplements like probiotics can help restore and maintain the vaginal microbiome, give it the acidic pH, and strengthen the immune system to keep away the bad guys. And if you keep away the bad guys or keep them from overgrowing, then they won't produce those VOCs, the volatile organic compounds, and you won't have the foul odor or any bad smelling thing coming from your vagina. So that's how probiotics and supplements, a multivitamin, all of that plays hand in hand with the immune system. Basically, probiotics and a strong immune system are hand in hand, and that's why I created Thrive Immunity. Check it out. But it's meant to strengthen the immune system so that your immune system and the probiotics work together to keep the bad guys at low amounts, a low microbial load, so that you don't have this infection and these foul symptoms and foul odor that's now growing due to bad bacteria overtaking the vagina. So I feel like this is a super long video, but we are almost done, everyone. So we have like another group of questions that's debunking myths and advanced topics. How concerned do I need to be about TSS? I'm secretly terrified. That's toxic shock syndrome. I would say that you don't have to be super scared of it. TSS is quite rare. Usually it happens, especially when people have like some kind of wound. So during vaginal birth or cesarean sections, and even with C-sections and vaginal births, TSS is very rare. So if you are just having a period and you're just worried about leaving a tampon in for too long or a menstrual cup, up. Like, it's just really rare. So I would say as long as you're changing your tampons frequently, your menstrual cups frequently, you are staying dry down there, you are making sure that you're changing often, as I mentioned, like, I think for the most part you will be okay. I know it's like one of those like hidden scary things to worry about, but like, you don't have to worry about it if you are taking the necessary precaution and actions to just keep bad bacteria away. So don't stress too much. Is it possible to grow resistant to probiotics? So actually, I wanted to mention this in the last video. So certain races and ethnicities have more of a certain lactobacillus strain than other groups and ethnicities and races. So it is possible that your body might not be receptive to something like Lactobacillus crispus or Lactobacillus rhamnosus, Lactobacillus reuteri. So this is still something that's being learned in the scientist's world, in a microbiologist's world. So we are still learning what races and what ethnicities have more Lactobacillus crispus, have more Lactobacillus rhamnosus. So I don't love when probiotics are like a one size fits all of just like one strain, because some people might not be receptive to that strain because of their genetics and their race and their ethnicity, whereas others can be more receptive. Right now, research has really showcased that for the most part, all women are pretty receptive to Lactobacillus rhamnosus and Lactobacillus reuteri. Those are very key, important strains, and the vagina for most women is just super receptive to it, and it is possible to restore and maintain the vaginal microbiome with those strains. So you can't really become resistant to the bacteria. It's just about if your body can maintain that bacteria, and it does go based off of a lot of different things like your genetic factors, your hormones, and your race, and all of that. But there are other things that can make you lose good and bad bacteria that isn't relevant to race and ethnicity. It could just be diet, hormones, and all that. So I would just say in general, no, make sure you're taking a probiotic like with Morocco's that has 50 billion CFUs. So it's just a widespread range of different bacteria, good bacteria, so that you're giving your vagina the diversity. And it's not just a one strain, one size fits all, but it's diversity. So personal and inspirational, this is the last subject. Someone asked if I'm coming out with anything for biofilms or BV. Yes, I mentioned this earlier in the video. I am in 2025, so stay tuned. It will be a digestive enzyme, and I'm so excited because this is so needed in our space, and I just cannot wait for you guys to get your hands on it. So another question is, how do you stay motivated during hard times? So I would argue that this is a hard time given the political climate right now and everything that's going on. How I stay motivated is knowing that this is needed. This is a space and this is a topic that needs to be continued to talk about. Like, I have to continue talking about this. People need this. I need this education. My mother needs this education. My friends and family, you guys, women, we need this education. We need this community. We need this support. And even during hard times when it feels so belittling and so disappointing, I strive to be more motivated than ever to create that safe space, because as long as I create that space and I continue to nurture it and water it and grow it, no one can take that away from me. No one can take that away from me. I don't think any man will understand how passionate I am about this. So that's not going to be taken away from me. So I stay motivated knowing that this is a real need, and I am being a voice for so many, and I'm going to keep pushing in my communities, on my social platforms, with this podcast, with my government officials locally, federally. I'm going to keep using my voice. And I think that's just how I stay motivated, is knowing that this is the mission of With Meraki Code. This is the mission of my life. This is what is important to me, what matters to me. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So that's really how I stay motivated, is coming back to my roots and what's important to me. And it's this is everything I've ever dreamed of and what I want to continue to do. And no one is going to take that away from me. All right, last question, and we will end this off. I've been filming forever, but what advice would you give to young women learning to navigate their health? So my best piece of advice is to stay open to learning new things about your vaginal and reproductive health. However, be careful what you read on the internet. I want you guys to understand that the internet is filled with so much misinformation, and that is why I create the content that I create, to do some myth busting, to be able to shed light on real science. Like, science matters. Science is how we learn about our bodies. So really trust people in the space who are using science to justify the information that they are giving you. If there is no science behind it, then it's not worth listening to what they're saying. The science, the why, the how, the when, all of that is so important. So just be open to learning about your reproductive health. But if something doesn't make sense, ask those questions and don't believe everything that you see on the internet. I see so many, like I've seen, so even with TikTok, especially with TikTok Shop, so many brands use the nastiest and most disappointing marketing to pitch their products, and they will say and make the most outrageous claims that are so untrue, scientifically untrue, just to make a sale. So just be mindful of those brands, because so many brands, and even brands like Summer's Eve and Vagisil, they will make products that disrupt the vaginal microbiome and kill off that good bacteria in the vagina, just so then once you use their pH balancing wash and then you kill that good bacteria, and now the bad bacteria is growing and you're having itching and you're having burning, you go back to the store, you buy their anti-itch cream, their anti-itch wipes. Now you are in this endless cycle of buying their product after product after product, thinking that they're going to help you when they're the ones that caused the problem to begin with. And a lot of brands will take advantage of how vulnerable you are, because vaginal health is so incredibly stigmatized that so many women want to be proactive about their health because it's such a important part of our body. And they will cause the problem and take advantage of that vulnerability, and they will cause the problem and cause more harm than good. So please just be so careful of what you read, what you purchase, what you put in your body. Make sure that it's scientifically backed. I know that reading research papers and stuff like that is really difficult. I hope that I can always be a resource for you guys if you ever have like products that, and I actually want to do next week, I think episode 4 is going to be a product review. So I'm going to be talking about some of the most famous and popular products on the market and share my thoughts on them. So let me know. I'll probably ask you guys to send like products that you want to know more about. But I'm just so happy that so many of you are being proactive about your health and want to learn more. So just be super receptive to learning, but just make sure that you don't believe everything that you read. So I hope that that helps answer the question. That was everything, guys. This is, oh my gosh, this is such a long video, but I literally had, I think on my list, like 56 questions on the list, and that was like taking out some questions, and I tried to shorten them and like group some together. So if I didn't answer or get to your question, I'm so sorry, but remember, I do want to do this again at some point. So just keep your eyes peeled on all of my socials and our email list, because I do engage with all of you who are shopping on With Meraki Co, but also know me personally, but also know the business from Instagram, but also know the business just from TikTok. So I just try to engage all of my communities, my customers, my audience, my personal friends and family. I just try to bring everybody together for these videos. So yeah, if your question was not answered, please reach out to me. I can get to you via DM or through my website on the contact us form. But I hope that this was super educational and that it helped you guys. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next episode. Make sure that you subscribe, comment, like, do all the things. Bye guys. Mwah.